Today we're working with fertilized eggs. There's a big difference between the eggs that we're working with today and the ones that you purchase in the store. The ones that you purchase in the store came from laying hens. That means that no rooster was required in order for them to lay those eggs. They're non-fertilized eggs, meaning that they would never produce a chick. Whereas today's eggs have been fertilized because a rooster was present. Therefore, that's why these have the capability of turning into chicks, but those store-bought eggs have no other purpose other than to serve as a protein for us to consume in the form of maybe scrambled eggs or baked into a cake or whatever else that is. So that's a key thing to distinguish when you're talking about chickens and the importance of poultry. Let's now get down into the logistics here, right? So it's going to take 21 days in order for our eggs to turn into hatched chicks. Now, we want to first start off by saying we hope that all of our 27 eggs make it. But logistically, there's a lot of different things that may take place in the process of hatching a chick. And we may or may not have a complete success rate. So just know that all or maybe some of the eggs may hatch in the end. This could be due to a variety of different things, such as disease, such as temperature issues where, one egg got significantly cooler. It could be a genetic thing inside of with the embryo. There's a lot of different reasons for why one might not hatch. But we're going to get into it. We're going to talk about our setup here. We have plenty of time to talk more about chickens and how much we love them and how important they are for our industry. So let's talk about our equipment that we have today. Today we have with us an incubator. Now there's lots of different brands out there, but we've got a pretty basic foam incubator that comes with a top just like this. Now our top has two see-through panes. We've got this foam base for our incubator, but it also comes with a water tray that's in the bottom and a base, and this is what the rotator is going to sit on. So we've got a water tray in the bottom already filled up with the appropriate amount of water. We've got the base, and then we've got what we call an egg rotator, okay? And this egg rotator is going to play a really key part once we get it settled inside of our incubator here. A lot of people don't realize that the hen naturally moves her eggs. You might say, well, duh, Miss Anna, of course she moves her eggs. She gets in and out her nest. Some are bound to be moved. But did you know she intentionally moves her eggs? That's a really important process of the incubation, or the process where the hen would naturally sit on the eggs. The incubation process is simply an artificial way to accomplish the same thing for a hen. We're able to move and have more controlled settings by moving those eggs from the hen so she can continue to take care of her business by moving them to an incubator where we can control water, heat source, those types of things, and safety as well so that nothing happens to those eggs. So we've got the rotator. That rotator is going to slowly shift back and forth throughout the day. And it's going to slowly move that egg and adjust it just enough. You almost wouldn't even notice it if you're sitting here watching it. It's going to move it back and forth to prevent the embryo from sticking to the inside of the egg. Continue to move it around as it's suspended by the chalaise, and we'll talk more about egg parts in the future. But that's what's taking place in this process. When it's in this turn, there's lots of other ways that you could accomplish this. You could also turn them by hand 2 to 3 times a day as well. But this ensures that we are providing a healthy option for those eggs to continue to turn, and it takes care of it for us. Now, like I said, I've got 27 eggs here that I have gotten from a producer here in the South Central Kentucky area. You might be curious, Miss Anna, what breed are these eggs? What breed of chickens did these come from? Well, I have a breeder named off a variety of different species, and I do mean a variety, probably 6 or 8 different species that she has, breeds that she actually has in her flock. I can tell just by looking at these eggs that I definitely have a variety of different species being represented here. One way I can tell that is by the color of the eggs. So as you can see here, I have 4 different eggs lying right here. One's white, one's a bluish green, one is a light tan, and one is a darker brown. The color of the egg is a really great way to indicate the different chickens that one came from. Now the next steps are pretty easy. We're going to be placing these eggs each air cell up. An air cell is another part of the egg that's really important to our process today. We're going to be placing those facing up. The way that I can identify that the air cell is up on this particular egg, and it can be a little harder to tell on camera, but in person I can clearly tell that each egg has a smaller or pointier end and a more larger, rounder end. The air cell of an egg forms in the larger end of the egg. I have already gone through and placed a little dot on the top side of each of these eggs to ensure that I have already double checked to see that the air cells are in fact located up and not placed down. That could be pretty fatal for an egg, or definitely cause a lot of issues for an embryo, a chick, if they were to not actually be placed up. Be really gentle with them. It's going to be really important. I'm going to start spacing these out a little bit, which helps out our rotator and not putting too much weight on one particular frame. The rotator has trays, so this rotator has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different trays that hold the eggs and keep them in place. The trays have little holes or little cubbies for the eggs to sit on. And while I can't space them all out perfectly, one space in between them because I've got so many of them, having so many eggs will prove to be pretty handy because, like I said, we're going to have some eggs that aren't going to end up hatching. And you know what? That's okay. Next, we're going to go ahead and turn on our heat setting. So this naturally tracks my heat setting. I'm going to be aiming for 100.5 degrees Fahrenheit. And I want to find that my little divot here matches up with my electrical cord. And we can turn our incubator around. Next, what we're going to talk about, ladies and gentlemen, real quick, before we hop off today, is we're going to talk about where are we at in this process. These eggs were laid yesterday. So when the eggs were initially laid, they were at 21 days to go, right? That was, what is that egg at the moment it is laid? When it's first laid, it simply just looks like an egg that you would find from the store. But the difference is because it's a fertilized egg, it's going to have a germinal disc that's going to be located on the yolk, the yellow portion of the inside of the egg. The germinal disc looks a lot like a teeny tiny little donut type of shape, to where it's going to have a wider outside ring and a clear empty center. And that's going to be located very small on the inside of the yolk, and that's what it's going to look like. Today, we're actually going to be on day 1. So as soon as heat is starting to be applied, we're discussing, what is it going to look like today? So that's what it looked like yesterday. What does it look like today? As we're applying heat, that means that there will be 20 days left to go. At this point in time, at the end of day 1, we're going to see that a couple of things are taking place, which is going to include growth within the yolk sac. So that's the yellow portion of the egg, as well as circulation system, and the vertebrae and the organs will begin to form. So there's already things, as soon as we get the heat going on these eggs, they're going to be on day 1. And we've got a really fun graphic series of eggs that kids can come and check out. But this is what day 1 looks like, right? So we can see a germinal disc that's begun here, and things, as soon as the heat applies to these eggs, they're going to start going. When we last left, we were at 20 days to go. So I didn't want to skip over because there's important things that happen each consecutive day that the egg is in the incubator. So right now, these guys are super toasty. They're sitting at 100.5 degrees. We keep an eye on their humidity as well. So these guys are doing really great. over the weekend. They use a little bit of water because they need the water that I placed down in the bottom trays. So we replaced some more water, but these guys don't need a whole lot of help right now. We just got to keep an eye on that water and the temperature. So let's talk about so we started on Friday, and there was 20 days to go left to go. On Saturday, we would have been at 19 days to go. So this is a really fun little education resource that we've got that we use with our classrooms, but it does a really great job of telling you at day 2, where is that chick embryo development stage. On Saturday, we began to see blood vessels appear in the yolk sac, the formation of veins and a heart, as well as the heart starts to beat. So literally on day 2, day 1, it's developed, it's fertilized. Day 2, the next day, 24 hours later, we already get to see the starts of the heartbeat. So that's really, really exciting. Some key things that we want to pay attention to in the egg fertilization process is, what a fertilized egg looks like, what the germination disc looks like. As a reminder for our viewers, a fertilized egg, when candled, would look like it's got a small donut. So a white ring with a empty kind of shape in the center of it. So it looks a lot like a donut. So that was what it looked like on Saturday. We're going to see a lot of progression in the first couple of days. On Sunday, at day 3, this chick was already beginning to develop its beak, wings, eggs, and begin to form. The amnion fluid starts to surround the embryo, so that's really important. That's going to provide a lot of nutrients to that embryo. We've got a lot of cool things going on. At this particular point, the egg's not going to resemble, the inside of the egg doesn't resemble a whole lot, but it's going to start picking up pace in the next couple of days, and especially this week, we're going to see a lot of things taking place. So today is an exciting day in my opinion, because this is the time where at day 4, the tongue starts to begin to form. The embryo separates from the egg yolk sac, and the allantosis breaks through the amnion fluid. So for our viewers, just so you can kind of see what a close-up of this might actually look like, is, we are starting to see vessels. That heart started beating at day 2, but we're starting to see vessels. We get to see a little spot. If we were candling this egg, this is what we would get to look at. So really neat. We have a lot going on at day 17. It's the first time that those veins look really distinguished, at least if you were seeing this in a candled situation. As a reminder, candling is a process of illuminating the egg with light in a dark space, which allows you to actually see the outline of different imagery that is developing with the embryo. We're really excited about day 8 and 9. So later, at the end of this week, we're going to be candling eggs, and that's a super exciting process to see where those eggs are going to be at that particular point in time. I've got some other education resources which are really helpful for kind of just understanding where these eggs are at. So on day 2, your egg was starting to look a bit more like this. So on Saturday, you could see more of those veins starting to develop. It's still just looking a little bit like an odd shape, but it's starting to develop. On day 3, you're seeing even more distinguished coloration. This is when you're having more development take place. Your wings, your beaks, those types of things are starting to develop at that particular point in time. Now, to move on to today, this is a really distinguished view of what the egg would look like inside today. So these eggs were laid last Thursday, and they were placed in the incubator, which starts the whole process on Friday, which was day 1. So now we're at day 4. Okay, with 17 days to go. So this is going to be a regular countdown to see where we're at. Once again, our fertilized eggs. So these are not just any egg that you find at the grocery store. These eggs were produced by hen with a rooster present. So fertilized eggs are not the same as an unfertilized eggs, which just require, the hen can regularly lay eggs without the presence of a rooster. These have been fertilized. So once the hen and the rooster get together and they have fertilized an egg, this is the process that's going to take place after that. So once that egg, the hen inside, she has a series of different yolk sacs. These ovas that are located in her ovary. These ovas look a lot like what you imagine the yolk to look like inside of an egg, right? So it's a yellow kind of spear, and they kind of start kind of small inside of the chicken. And as they develop and as it comes closer and closer in time for that hen to lay that egg, they will expand and release themselves from a thin membrane that holds that ova, that yolk sac, in place inside of the hen. So what happens, or why is this important, okay? This is important because once that yolk sac leaves, I think it's a really cool process. The next 23 to 32 hours that takes place as the hen actually puts that yolk into an egg, right? So the egg doesn't naturally just form all by itself, all with a hard shell. It doesn't necessarily look like this from the start. It starts with the yolk. Then, after it's released in a 23 to 32 hour process, it will start to calcify. So the outside builds up with a calcium deposit, and it's going to continue to develop and harden and create a protective shell around the egg. I just want to describe that once it leaves the ovary, then it's going to go into the ovary duct. The ovary duct is essentially a long tube that is a little over 2 feet long inside of the hen. And once that yolk leaves the ovary, then it's going to start traveling in a shape like this, up and down throughout the hen's oviduct. At that point, she's adding all the necessary components to actually make this egg viable. If the yolk came out of the hen just like a yellow yolk is, you can imagine that it would bust just like that, right? We've all probably busted an egg before in order to make a cake or cook or whatever else, and you know how easy those yolks are to be broken. The egg, we cannot underestimate the importance of a good shell around that egg and the importance that plays. An eggshell is comprised of thousands, like 7,000 different pores that are all over this egg. The egg pores allow for the egg to do one of two things. One, it takes in oxygen, right? It takes in that important oxygen that it needs, but it also removes carbon monoxide, and it's also going to remove gases and things that the embryo is excreting, so getting rid of, okay? So it allows for the good, clean air to come in and the bad stuff to remove. The eggshell also plays an important part for ensuring that we don't get a lot of bacteria or different diseases that are going to affect that embryo. So there's two different primary membrane layers of that shell, and that's what helps protect that embryo and keep it safe. Remember, those are probably going to be likely covered in manure. You can see we don't want to take our eggs out for too incredibly long, but we'll kind of reveal to you one of these eggs really quick. Okay, so this egg right here is nice and warm, but if you see on the outside, viewers, we've got lots of dirt and nasty and manure and those types of things. Of course, I'll wash my hands afterwards, that are affected. That's why that shell is going to be so incredibly important for this egg, keeping it healthy and safe, and we definitely don't want to keep these eggs out for too long. So today we just wanted to touch a little bit on the hen process, what that looks like as the egg is developing before it ever gets laid. Tomorrow we're going to be talking more about the parts of the egg and why that's really important. We'll follow with a variety of other things about the nutritional value of eggs and other things to expect throughout the egg process. So stay tuned with us each day. We'll return again tomorrow. Today is day 5 of 21 days, meaning that we have 16 days left to go in our incubation process before these embryos are ready to hatch into chicks. So today we're going to talk a little bit more about the egg and where we are in that process today. At day 16, we are, we've got some important things happening. This is when the chick is continuing to start to look a little bit more like a chick each and every single day. Some major development things that are happening at day 5 are the formation of reproductive organs. That means today is the day where they either are a female chick or a male chick. So at day 5, that's determined, and that is part of this process, okay? At day 5, we also have the proventriculus and the gizzard form. Now, I know that's a really big word. Long story short, the proventriculus and the gizzard are parts of almost like the esophagus area of the chicken. The gizzard, most people notice that chickens sometimes will eat pebbles and little grains and that type of things and think, oh, that's really odd. The gizzard is where those little pebbles and stones are actually stored at. The chicken actually intentionally consumes small little pebbles and stones, which allow them to help break down larger grains, especially corn type of products that are in their feeds, and they will actually kind of regurgitate that towards the front of their mouth and back down again, and that helps to kind of break down those major grains. Those are some major things happening at day 5. So lots of cool things going at this point in time. Let's take a close-up of what this egg looks like today. All right, this is when I say it's starting to look a little bit more like a chick. I mean, it's starting to look a little bit more like a chick. So the eyes are going to become more distinguished. We are now coming up, 7 days would be a third of the way through the process. So towards the end of this week, we'll be a third of the way through the process if we're at day 5. So we're not quite, but we're a little over, at that quarter stage right now. We're pretty much at a quarter of the way through the process of the egg. So today, we've checked on these guys and gals. They have just regular upkeep of the incubator. We continue to keep an eye on the water. The humidity level should be somewhere in the 40 to 60% range. Humidity. So let's talk about why we need humidity. Humidity is going to be really key. Humidity is the presence of water, if you will. We have humidity in the air. That's really important. Certain parts of the United States world has a higher humidity level rather than lower. If you live in the South, our humidity level typically is a lot higher, right? Especially here in the state of Kentucky, especially during the summer. We definitely notice that, right? If you were to go to more arid type of locations or like when I visited friends in Wyoming and in some of those higher elevation areas, their humidity levels are much lower than ours. Humidity is going to be key for these eggs because it provides the moisture that they need. Remember, they've got 100.5 degrees heat applied to them 24/7 for 21 days, right? If we continue to apply heat and never apply any kind of moisture, then it would definitely dry these guys out. The hen naturally provides some sort of humidity as well, just like humans might kind of sweat and that type of thing. When a hen is normally sitting on top of that egg, she provides a natural source of humidity as well when she's sitting on several of these eggs. We are just, once again, the incubation process for these fertilized eggs is a lot like we're just replicating what the hen's doing, okay? We are applying heat, but this is even more well-rounded heat. Rather than the hen kind of getting up, going, doing her own thing, going to eat, coming back to the egg, these eggs are constantly, if not even better, receiving better care than it would with the hen because they're constantly receiving the heat that they need, the humidity that they need. Our chicks are doing a really great job. We're really excited about the candling process that's going to take place later this week. At that particular point, when we go to candling, we're going to be trying to determine which of these eggs actually were successfully fertilized. Now know that we've got 27 eggs in here. There's a chance that not all these eggs got fertilized, and that's just part of the natural process. And or they either one possibly didn't get fertilized, and some of them definitely will be fertilized, and we'll see a lot of growth and development. We may have some that are either infertilized or had some sort of issues within the embryo and within the egg in the first couple of days. Today is day 6 of the process with 15 more days to go. In today's series, we're going to give a little bit of an update about what's going on with these eggs as well as talk about the anatomy of the egg. So what are the important parts that are inside the egg that are important not to just glaze over, but to focus on and to better understand the embryology, and the process of the embryo development, the chick inside of the egg. So these are all important things that we're going to cover today. All right, so like I said, today is day 6. We are almost a third of the way. Tomorrow will be a third of the way through, and we have 15 more days to go. So let's talk a little bit more about what is taking place on day 6. On day 6, we're starting to see the digits form on the legs and wings of the embryo. So digits are starting to form on legs and wings. And additionally, the abdomen, which is kind of like the stomach area, begins to become more prominent. So if you see here in our image here, we really have something that's looking a little bit more distinguished, right? At this point in time, if we were to candle, which is illuminating that egg, we would see a lot more detail in the vein structure of the embryo, which is in development. I have pulled out day 6's egg. So here's a nice, clear little image of what this would look like a zoomed in version of what the development of the embryo would look like. At this point, in my opinion, this is the first day that we start getting to look at something that's really starting to look like a living being, right? That it is developing. And I want to remind folks that chickens, poultry, are they warm-blooded or are they cold-blooded animals? Do you know? Do you remember? Poultry and birds belong to cold-blooded animals. So today I have with me a graphic that shows the anatomy of an egg. So if you've opened up an egg before, you've probably noticed a couple of things, right? So if you've been baking, you're cooking, you know first and foremost, it's got a hard shell, right? Well, what you don't probably realize is this outside shell is developed of a calcium substance, okay? It is actually comprised of an outer and an inner membrane. And the pores reach in between the outer and the inner membrane. This is really important, as I mentioned the other day, to protect that embryo development from bacteria and dirt and nasty things that could get in. So that's the main job of the outer membrane. The inner membrane serves as like a passage gate, letting the good stuff in, like oxygen, and the bad stuff like gases and waste out of the egg through those pores. So those serve really important parts and jobs in the anatomy of an egg. Then as you kind of move closer in, you've got the albumin fluid. So what that's going to look like if you cracked open an egg is that's going to be the clear. We call those the egg whites, for instance, in baking and cooking. But the albumin fluid serves as a nutrient source for the embryo. It also serves as protection. So as the chick develops inside of our egg, and as it's developing, it is going to develop out of the yolk portion of the egg, right? So the yolk is what's housing the embryo, and it develops and kind of pulls in those nutrients from the yolk. But it'll also use some of the albumin fluid as nutrients to feed and sustain it for the 21 days that it is developing. So those are really important parts. A lot of people don't realize that there is, an air sac. So when you crack open an egg, you might see that little pocket of air that looks like a really thin membrane. That's a separation of the outer and inner membranes that create an air pocket. That air cell performs a really important job where it is providing oxygen and air for that embryo to breathe, okay? So that's going to be really important. We actually grade our eggs by sizes A, B, and petite, and so on, based upon the size of their air cell. So if you've ever wondered, well, what makes the difference between a egg, a B egg, what's the difference there? It's going to be the air cell and how large that is. Size comes into it, especially when you're talking about petite eggs, which those aren't as common nowadays, but the air cell is really important in that process. Then you have the stringy portion. So if you've ever opened up your egg, cracked it open, and noticed that there is like a white filmish kind of film, if you will, or small ropish type of substance in your egg, and wondered, what is this? What happened here? Is this part of the development of the chick? Whatever else? More than likely in your store-bought eggs, those were completely non-fertile. So they never were fertilized. That's not part of a chick that's developed at all. It's the chalaise that you actually are probably noticing. So the chalaise is really cool. It's almost like a rope that ties at both ends of the yolk. Now it's got the albumin or the egg white that surrounds the yolk, but the chalaise wraps around the yolk here and has almost like thin little strands that allows it to hold that yolk in the very middle of the egg. Now most people are like, okay, what's so important about the chalaise? This is really important. This holds the yolk in the middle of the egg. That's really, really key, because imagine if our yolk wasn't suspended in the middle of the egg. And let's just say there was no chalaise, okay? Then our yolk would bump up against the insides of the egg. If it received a lot of rough treatment, it might burst. We've all, cracked open an egg. You know how soft and gentle those egg yolks are. If we didn't have the chalaise to hold or kind of harness that yolk to the very center of the egg, surrounded by that really protective albumin fluid, that's what's keeping this yolk protected. That is what's protecting the embryo. So those are really important parts of this as well. Then you do have the ventral membrane. That is going to be the membrane that surrounds the yolk. That is actually what the chalaise attaches to. That kind of is just a real thin layer that holds in the yolk. It's kind of almost invisible to the eye, but that when you break an egg, you may find that the yolk is still gathered together on a store-bought egg, but then sometimes you have to burst the yolk if it didn't already maybe crack or burst open when you cracked the initial egg. So that would be an example of what a real-life demonstration of the ventral membrane would look like. So there's not much look to it, but know that each of these parts of the egg serves a really important part in ensuring that this embryo, this chick embryo, develops properly. Now, sometimes different things will take place inside of the egg, and that can cause some failure when it comes to hatching chicks later. But just know that the parts of an egg is really important to understand in determining the success of our embryos. Right now today, they are sitting in a warm, toasty, tropical climate of 100.5 degrees. In our incubator here, we've added more water to the bottom of their water tray, and these guys are doing really good. Today, we get main division. At day 7, we get main division of arms, or of legs and wings. So this is really cool. So if we were to actually flip back to yesterday, you're going to see a huge major change at the things that were taking place yesterday, all right, at day 6. Look at how much is developed at day 7. Wow, we're seeing huge development. That's why I said we're a third of the way through the process now. There's 21 days. 7 days is a third of that process. We've got some major things going on, like the division of legs and wings. The comb growth begins. So that would be the comb on top of the hen or rooster. The egg tooth begins to form. The egg tooth is a very unique feature on poultry and birds. It's almost like their baby tooth that's on the end of their beak, and they actually lose it eventually, but it's an extra attachment, if you will, that helps them, as it encourages through its name, the egg tooth, it helps them to break through their egg. So that's really important. It's like that baby tooth that helps them to break that egg and actually get out on their first day of hatching. Then they start voluntary movement. So as you can tell, we looked at what day 6 looked like. We looked at what day 7 looks like now. The fact that we're starting to get some movement, digits and things are really taking place. That's really exciting news. I'm really eager and excited to show you all what the candling process looks like tomorrow, so definitely stay tuned for that. But here's an even greater up-close version of what this egg development is going to look like. Now, of course, my picture that I previously had doesn't look exactly the same, right? This is more of a zoomed-in picture of what that process actually looks like. You see what the actual egg picture looks like in my previous diagram, but this is a closer up version of what that embryo, that chick embryo, is actually going to look like up close. Yesterday was day 7, and we are over a third of the way through our process now. At day 8, which is where we're at today, we're going to see additional development of the feather tracts, as well as bone calcification starts to begin. So up to now, there really hasn't been much bone structure in the embryo. It's just, organs are starting to form. Now we're starting to see bones develop. So that's a really important part of course, having a very viable chick. Feather tracts, that is essentially what's going to develop the feathers. So if you've ever looked up close at a bird, they have feather tracts, and that's where their feathers actually sprout from. So that's where we are development-wise today. If viewers want to check out what that egg's going to look like. So at this point in time, when we go to candle eggs, you're going to start seeing a little bit of a cloudiness appearance. So we're going to talk more about, we're going to have some viable eggs today, and we're going to have some non-viable, the good and the bad eggs. We know to expect that there will be a little bit of both, and there will be a variety of different reasons which we'll go over. But as you can see with the development and by our image here, our chicks are starting, they're a third of the way through the process. They're starting to get kind of bigger, okay? They're no longer teeny tiny. They're starting to get bigger in that egg, and they're going to start filling more of that egg up. Today we're going to be candling with a candling device. So this right here is just a kind of fancy flashlight. And it happens to have a black tip that with a hole that's going to actually help force the light directly into the egg and kind of hold it there. This is a really beneficial tool, but I'll be honest, you can make your own candling lights, or you can just apply a flashlight. So if we will, we're going to go ahead and hit the light and go ahead and start with our candling process. So we're going to just remove the lid of the candler just a little bit. We've already kind of taken a look at some of our eggs to see, okay, how are our eggs doing? So let's first look at what a good egg might look like. So right here we have an egg, and you're probably just going to see the highlighted portion, okay? So if you can see from that side, viewers, hopefully you can see that there's a really light bottom. There's dark. You see some vein growth possibly. This is an egg that's developing right now. So it looks half full, if you will. This egg is in development stage. So here is a great viable egg. When I'm illuminating it, you should see the air cell here at the very top. So if you're wondering what that really light portion of the egg is, that's the air cell. That part is really necessary for the egg to get the appropriate oxygen it needs to survive. Let's take a look at another good egg. All right. So we've got another one. This one actually does a really nice job. I don't know if the camera is capturing that, but hopefully the viewers can see that the embryo is pushing up against the side of the egg. And as I move the candling light around, hopefully you can kind of see the movement of the embryo in there, which is really, really cool. This one does a really great job of showing off the embryo. So this is another viable egg. Let's take a look at what a non-viable egg looks like. So here's an example of what a non-viable egg looks like. I would speculate that this egg never was fertilized. It's possible at any point in the 21 days for an egg to stop in its development due to diseases, due to something wrong with the embryo. This one does not appear like it ever had a chick in development. So we're looking all around. We see that air cell. It's got a nice big air cell, but we don't see any major spots in the egg. So this is a non-fertile egg. We've got another non-fertile egg here. This is what this looks like. Sorry, I'll get my fingers out of the way for viewers. So this is another one that never probably had any development. Let's handle 1 or 2 eggs more that we have not looked at. So this is kind of like Russian roulette. We have no clue what these guys look like at this point in time. Oh, here's an example of this is one of our green eggs, and you can tell when I'm highlighting it there. We see some really nice vein growth, if the camera's capturing that. Really nice. Ooh, that does a really great job. Vein growth that's on the egg. You can see that there's a large dark space in the very center. It doesn't, at this particular point in time, it doesn't look like there's a lot going on, but I promise you there is. This is a really important time. Let's see if we can get part of the embryo. I think the embryo is hovering up here. It is such a darker eggshell that it's a little bit hard to capture it, but oh yeah, you can see him. He's hovering right here near the edge. So good deal. That's exciting. We can see that guy floating around in there. So as you can tell, vein development is going really well right now. We're going to do one more egg just so viewers can kind of see. It's a really exciting process. We'll actually go through and continue to, this is another good one. We'll end up going through and continuing to mark each of our eggs. During the candling process, you can actually remove the eggs that are not viable. So we've got another one. You see the dark shadow in the very center. That's the bulk of the egg. Now, based upon the color of the egg, the thickness of the calcium, sometimes it's a little easier, sometimes it's a little harder to see different components of it. But there you can see kind of the embryo. It's pretty tough to kind of find that guy, but he would be the darker space here at the very center of that egg. Well, guys, we've seen several really viable eggs. We've seen some good eggs, but we've also seen some bad eggs. So I want to thank you all for tuning in with us today. If our classes that are watching have any questions for us, let us know.